first. Going to the campaign, the current congressman, a Democrat, Patrick Murphy, claims he's one of the most bipartisan members of Congress, with a lower percentage in lockstep with his own party, the Democrat Party. And it's been suggested that this argument on his behalf is gaining some traction within this congressional district. Why is that not true? And how are you going to deal with that?
More 30 seconds. Give him a couple minutes. Well, I actually think in some ways a lot of folks are buying into it. I think he's a great positioner. I think the party's positioned him well. I think he definitely comes across to a lot of independents. I mean, we're looking at near 40% in this area are independents now, and that number is growing faster than any other number. He's appealing to them. Why? Because he's not the establishment guy. So the party's smart. They got behind him. They positioned him well, made sure he stands up and supports the right bills, as well as doesn't stand up and support the wrong bills. So on one hand, I think the Democratic Party's been successful in positioning him in the eyes of a lot of independents as someone more centrist in the middle. That's why it's extremely important that we don't send an establishment candidate up in this race. If you want to bring down Patrick Murphy, you have to put somebody out there who appeals to everybody, who appeals to the left as well. I'll get into it later, but as I mentioned as well too, I have a plan, and my plan appeals to everybody. And when I talk about my plan, I usually get a lot of feedback. And the best compliments I've been getting in this campaign run have been on a couple occasions. One after the MOA dinner, I had a gentleman come up to me who's a Democrat, say, thank you for talking to everybody in the room. It stood out, and you're the one I like a lot in this race, even though I'm a Democrat, I'm gonna vote for you in November. After the last all-board Florida meeting, I had a gentleman approach me in the parking lot, same thing. I'm a Democrat, I'm not gonna change my party, but guess what? You're the first person over 60 years that has an R in front of your name that I'm considering voting for the first time in 60 years. That's the type of candidate that will win the general election. Someone who can bring that independent vote, as well as bring a lot of Democratic votes too. You send an establishment candidate up against Patrick Murphy, Murphy will stay in there. You send an establishment candidate up against Patrick Murphy, even if he or she wins, it's just another Patrick Murphy with the letter R in front of the name. Thank you.
Well, I'm glad Nick finally came out of the closet and announced that he's publicly pro-life. First time. The question is about Patrick Murphy's voting record. I tell you this, it is not what it appears. I track his voting record. His voting record comes to my phone every single day when he's in Washington. And guess what? 90% of the time he votes Democrat. The only time he votes with Republican is to name a post office after a soldier. I have his voting record, and I keep it in an Excel file so I can see, and I will challenge him on that. So when you talk about him being bipartisan, him reaching across the aisle, it's a fallacy. It's not true. I have proof, and I can show it. There was one day that I got his voting record, 22 out of 22 votes. It's hardline Democrat with Pelosi and Waterman shows. No difference. So when he talked about going across the aisle and being bipartisan, it's not true. The only time he ran against his party on a major issue was to vote for a select committee to investigate Benghazi. And Pelosi blew her lid. But what it was told to her was, let him have that one. He needs it. He needs more than that if he meets me in the general election. Thank you.
Unfortunately, ladies and gentlemen, perception in politics is reality. And unfortunately, Patrick Murphy is perceived as a moderate, and I've gone door to door. I've had to convince a lot of Republicans to stick with us this time and be in our court. And the way this thing's going to come down, as I see it, it's going to come down to Obamacare, it's going to come down to the all-aboard Florida. He's positioned himself extremely well on the estuaries and the river and Woodbury. And even though he really hasn't brought home the bacon like our good Senator Joe Negron has, and we have to expose that too, because, you know, again, it's all rhetoric with Mr. Murphy, but he does it well. And that's why, with all due respect, I don't think I can say liberals, because they think Republicans are the antichrist at this point. But we can convince, and here's the good news. Remember I told you there's a lot of good news out there. The good news is there's a lot of Democrats that have talking about the typical couple where the husband is Republican and the wife is Democrat or vice versa. And I go to those homes, and every time, virtually every single one has said, don't worry, in November you got me too, along with the Republicans saying they'll support me in the primary. So there are people very upset. It's not the left wing of the Democratic Party, but it's more of the moderate Democrats, what we used to call Reagan Democrats. They will be with us as long as we tell them the truth about Patrick Murphy. You need a candidate that's going to explain it very easily and very straightforward and take the quotes from Patrick Murphy, like, I like the exchanges on Obamacare. I think it's about time that we get these people insured, you know, and take those and turn it and spin it. Whereas he is for Obamacare, he has supported it consistently. He's voted against the Republicans when they tried to repeal it. And then we have to take him home on all aboard Florida because he originally came out for it. He's been backpedaling, but we've got to make sure that the public understands this guy's for high-speed trains. And as I've said in the past, he's got to come clean on his father's company's relation with the FEC.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes. Yes.
It's a good question. Murphy does get a lot of great press. You know, even when we have a Republican forum, the headline involves Murphy. It's amazing, but it's a facade, and that's what voters will understand. He votes with Pelosi and Obama over 85% of the time. Whenever it matters, at the end of the day, he will vote with Obama and with Pelosi. As has been said before, he favors Obamacare. Here's a plan that Americans are rejecting in vast numbers. He's also on the record being in favor of the train. Again, for the community, it is a big negative. He's currently changing his mind. Only after we spoke up. He himself has not taken the initiative to speak for the people. On the issue of the river, he gets a lot of great press. But the only solution to stop all these discharges is to get the water to flow south as nature intended. Well, Murphy has never stood up to Big Sugar. And that is the only way to get the water going the way it should. And the issue of the day is immigration. We have children being lured across the border because of this amnesty and the DREAM Act. And Murphy favors that plan, as all Democrats do. That issue alone should help win us this election. I'll tell you, I'm going door to door, and once in a while I do knock on someone who's moved out and speak to a Democrat. No one wants amnesty. No one wants this immigration bill as it works. We should not bring in more foreigners when Americans don't have jobs. And that message has full support across all parties. It's not a partisan issue. It is basically speaking for American citizens instead of foreigners. We have to prioritize our citizens first. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you. If anybody wants you to think that this election is anything but about health care, they're mistaken. I have talked to business owners, small business owners. I've talked to families, young families, seniors, and across the district. The one thing I hear is that Obamacare is hurting them, it's causing them to lose jobs, lose their plans, lose their doctors, and it's expensive, it's not affordable. Patrick Murphy has a record. When he was running in 2012, he kept saying, oh, don't hold the Democrats' record against me because I don't have a record. Now he does. He voted for job-killing policies with Obamacare again and again. He's on record and voted for Obamacare numerous times. He voted for cuts to Medicare. He voted for cuts to veterans. He has a record that he now can be challenged on. I am a healthcare professional. I'm the only healthcare professional in this race. I have an MBA in healthcare management. I worked as an advocate for patients for decades. I'm also a registered nurse. I understand what Obamacare is doing to our seniors. I understand what it's doing to our families. And Patrick Murphy has this record, and I will hold him accountable for his failings on healthcare. And that's how we can defeat him. This aura of bipartisanship is an aura, as everyone's explained already, about his voting is more appearances than it is actual reality. But I actually have experience working across the aisle. When I was a healthcare attorney, I represented a patient before the FDA and Congress. Apparently, Big Pharma would rather have the FDA.
I think if you hold it a little further away.
Okay. As a healthcare attorney, I represented a family of a 4-year-old boy who died after having vascular surgery for hypertension. It was a big surgery, but it was elective. It was timed. They had the best doctors, best hospitals. There was no reason for this child to do anything but come out very well. The patient's family, the mother and father, were told that their son's brain had died. The child died after a routine procedure. They came to my office seeking an answer because the doctors could not tell them why the child died. There was no answer. So I investigated and found out that there was a prescription drug that was given to the child that when it was metabolized in the body released cyanide. And it caused cyanide toxicity to this child. I engaged experts from around the country. In fact, we had an intensivist in Jacksonville, Florida that did all this research that showed that the drug is toxic within the range recommended by the manufacturer. So it was mislabeled, it was unsafe as the manufacturer has prescribed it. When I challenged it to the FDA, they said,
Ms. Hires, I hate to interrupt
okay,
when you're.
I'll just wrap it up. I'll wrap it up.
That's a really important thing, but
Okay.
it's going to come in another question.
I'll just wrap it up then. The outcome was I took it to the FDA and Congress, and I worked with John Dingell, a Democrat. And together, we worked to force the FDA to force Hoffman LaRoche to relabel the product and save lives. Years later, we received a report that the death rate for these type of procedures dropped by 50%. Heart procedures dropped by 50%. And I was given a note saying, nice job, Hires. So I can work across the aisle. I have a record of it actually accomplishing something.
Well, thank you very much. I was pleased that most of the candidates, and we've had many of these forums before, did what you're going to have to do against Patrick Murphy. You've got to know your facts, not your fantasies. Now, Ms. Hires in her first answer said, then Democratic Governor Charlie Crist on a bill that I voted for. Of course, she didn't live in the state then. Charlie did change parties, but then so did Beverly. 2 years ago, she was running as an independent against Mary Lynn Mager. What you're going to have to do is know the issues. Now, we all have ideas of what the big issues are going to be, and time will tell. My big issues, my priority is going to be jobs, and we're going to have a record of having created jobs, both in the private and public sector. Nick, we have a very specific program. You've heard it many times. Mine's going to be national security. We are getting wiped out everywhere around the world. We can't keep benefits. But how you're going to beat Murphy is by doing your homework and putting stuff out like this. Most of you got this, there's extras. And you know, after we put this out, quoting Patrick Murphy and quoting my position, I got calls from the press, I got many, many emails, and they all say university. Well, Patrick Murphy is opposed to all aboard Florida. And I asked him, show me one document where he's ever said he's opposed. Guess what? His spokesman said he's opposed, but Patrick Murphy has never come out and said he's opposed. He's not got one document that says he's opposed. As late as a few weeks ago, he was on the river saying, we got to be worried about this safety concern or not. You got to get this guy, because this is a guy typical of many people, especially liberal Democrats. Here, they're conservative, they're all with you in Washington. Listen, you don't raise $2.7 million if you're a nonpartisan Democrat. Debbie Wasserman Schultz, just a few days ago, sent out a mailer for this guy. I've done these debates before. When Brian Miller outspent me almost, well, 2 to 1, 1.5 to 1, we beat him, and a lot of people thought I was going to lose. If you don't have a record, if you talk about jobs, you haven't created jobs. You talk about the military, haven't been in the military, it's hard to debate someone.
We're going to mix the order up a little bit. I'm going to ask Mr. Lahr to answer this question first, and then I'll call out who answers it next. Our president is asking for, last time I checked, $3.5 billion to deal with a mounting crisis regarding immigration on our Texas border and other areas of the Southwest. What should we be doing with regard to immigration, and in particular, the lack of control of our borders?
That's a great question. That's the question of the day. You know, I support legal immigration and eventual citizenship for those who enter the country legally. But I firmly oppose amnesty and the importation of cheap foreign labor, which will lead to even fewer jobs and more wages for Americans. As your congressman, I will insist on closed borders, tough sanctions for businesses who hire illegals, and ensure that companies only hire citizens and legal residents. Now, it's true, right now I think the number is 3.8 billion, it keeps growing. You know, it's amazing. We are spending money which we can't afford, and we're housing illegals in our military installations at a time when we don't have, supposedly, enough money to care for our veterans. It's incredible, it's unacceptable. And the only solution is to enforce our laws. We need to make sure the administration does what it's supposed to be doing. And we need to bring it to the people, to all citizens, that if we continue down this path, we will continue having fewer jobs for Americans. More of our college students will be graduating and not finding employment. And if we continue and speak up for American workers instead for foreigners, we can win this election not only in 2014, but also the White House in 2016. We can change the narrative of the Republican Party is siding with Americans and instead of how the Democrats are doing. And no matter how much press we get, or the Democrats get, at the end of the day, Americans know that they're not being represented by that leadership. The Democrats do not speak for the people any longer, and we can get back the majority. Thank you.
Mr. Schlesinger.
Well, first we got to close the barn door. And I'm talking about using everything. I'm talking about surveillance, I'm talking about any high-tech ability that we can use, including the National Guard if necessary. You know, we have a National Guard that's been used in so many cases to protect our country. And here we have the perfect example, because if we don't have sovereign boundaries, we don't have a sovereign country. It's as simple as that. So the first thing we have to do is we've got to stop this flow. We need a president, unfortunately, that actually would go down to the border, see what's going on, and make a statement. I mean, it's very easy for the President of the United States to say to Central America, you know, El Salvador, Guatemala, and others, enough is enough. We're not going to tolerate this anymore. Any of your people coming in here are going right back. And by the way, you know, the aid you thought you were expecting, we're going to use that because our social program costs have gone up astronomically due to your citizens. So instead of giving you aid, which who knows what you're doing with it down there, we're going to use it for your people in the United States. What do you think of that? You watch how quick that door will be closed. Secondly, the illegals that are here, we've got to deal with them realistically. The only candidate on this table here who's giving you a proposal, I call it a blue card. Those that are here illegally have to register. If they don't, they're deported. If they do register, they have to pay a penalty, and they have to work in jobs such as migrant farm labor, or they have to work in home health care, killing two birds with one stone, because with the baby boom now getting older, we need more and more healthcare employees that will work inside the homes, and we need to have them trained, and this way they can earn their way to a green card, but never citizenship. Anyone who entered here illegally should never, ever have the opportunity to have citizenship in this country. But we have to be realistic, we have to handle this problem, and I'm telling you right now that if we don't get serious about this, we're going to lose our country.
Oh, yeah.
Well, folks, I don't have to tell you that I have a unique position on immigration, being a legal immigrant myself, coming here under a student visa, getting my green card and earning my U.S. citizenship, paying my taxes along the way. We have a big problem here with illegal immigrants coming to the country. And as a healthcare professional of 19 years, my wife was a physician of 19 years, who have been taking care of multiple forms of diseases coming to this country. When I got my visa, I had to present the U.S. Embassy with a certificate of health. We have immigrants coming to this country, we don't know what they're bringing in. My wife tells me we have an increase in whooping cough, tuberculosis, and the World Health Organization said there's an increase in polio, 400,000 new cases last year. So we don't know what's coming across the border. So my first position is to secure our borders. Secondly, and you know, Alan and I have the same idea, I would just withhold any foreign aid from those countries that send their kids here. Also, we have a national issue that's going to impact us locally. The Obama administration is shipping these kids all around the country, trying to find parents or family members who they belong to. Do you know what that's going to do to Indian towns? That's going to triple the population of Indian town. That's going to increase the burden on our school district, increase the burden on our healthcare system. Indian town infrastructure doesn't have the capabilities to manage this. We have a local issue right now that can be resolved with a federal plan. I also have a plan to address immigration. And I disagree with Alan. I don't think they should get a green card. I think they should never have an opportunity to get citizenship. Not because it will increase Democrats' votes. No. No, I say a green card. You want a green card? No. Never citizenship, but I disagree with your green card proposition. But I'll finish this. They should never have an opportunity to get citizenship, nor green card. My proposal is that they've been here in the country for X amount of years, let them come in and apply for a work permit. Never citizenship, never green card, period.
Well, great. Well, let me start out by saying for the record, I was never a healthcare professional. When I was 12 years old, I did break my arm and have to go to the hospital. So I'm not an expert. You know, this is another area where Patrick Murphy is very weak. Go to his website and see him tell you how supportive he is of the DREAM Act. He's supportive of the president's decision not to follow the laws. And he's also supportive of amnesty. But I think it's a bigger issue. I mean, for $3.4 billion, you could do a lot. Heck, for $30 million, we give every one of those kids a first-class ticket back to their home. Let's do that. But the real issue is this. We have a present administration. Remember this, every candidate. Murphy was a Republican that sought out becoming part of the Obama team. And this president, just in the last few weeks, has been told by the U.S. Supreme Court he's not following the rule of law. Our immigration problem is a rule of law problem. In Hobby Lobby, administratively, he put mandates on Christians against their religious beliefs. The Supreme Court said no. National Labor Relations Board, he said, I'll tell Congress, I'll tell the Senate when it's a recess. 9-0, 9-0. The Supreme Court said no. And remember this, last year when they said that AFA, the Affordable Care Act, was constitutional, one big part of it, the mandated increase in Medicare for each state, was judged unconstitutional. What we've got to do is have congressmen up there that will stick to the United States Constitution, and I think every one of us will, because I've heard most of us say we will.
Mr. Wilkinson. Well, it's been a while since I've actually stood up. There's been a few things thrown in my direction. I want to hit those real quick. One, my website's been up since February, talking about my views on pro-life and so forth. So that's been, I think the website's pretty public. I do think I do attract a lot of the left. I believe actually a good 70% of Americans, both left and right leaning, all want the same type of America. I think a lot of folks just might see a different road to get there. Of course, you got a far left and far right that you're never going to persuade to do anything, and that's just going to be that way. But if you can communicate with folks in that 70%, which I do, I think you got something working. And there's two simple principles that you do that. One, when we elect somebody to represent us, we want he or she to represent us and our families first. And two, when we elect that person, we want them to invest our money responsibly. Those are two very simple principles that, yes, a lot of Democrats and liberals do agree with. Those two simple principles. My plan's based on that, and I'll talk about that later. Big Sugar was also thrown. Big Sugar actually is at fault for a lot of things. They're owning up to it. 56% cut in phosphorus output over the last 6 years. They donated over 30,000 acres for water pooling. They're still doing more. Doesn't mean they still can't do more. They are at fault. There's a lot of other folks at fault too.